in the preliminary stages right now, but I sent off an audition video for a Netflix show called Haunted. It's like true stories of ghosts. But I sent them my story. I sent them my Shadow People story. I did that episode. I think that was episode like 75 or something like that. I sent them the story about the Shadow People invasion. And they're like, oh, that story was really scary. Let's see a video of you. So I did. I did the video and I was like, hey, my name is Jason Cook. I'm from Hood River. Here's the story. It's like a quick little 3-minute video. Sent it off to them. I'll keep you guys informed. I put down as my occupation, podcast host. Maybe get a couple listeners from that as well. So we'll see. We will see. I'll keep you guys informed how the Netflix thing goes. That would be cool though, wouldn't it? And this is the plan. I'm not going to tell my mom. If I get the show, I'm not going to tell my mom. The next time I see her, I'll just be like, hey, I know you're not really into spooky stuff, but let's watch this show Haunted. Let's watch this show on Netflix. And we'll just turn it on and she'll be like, ah! So, anyways, I'll let you guys know how that goes. Let's go ahead and get started with the episode though. First story I want to talk about is something I'd heard about a long time ago. Really kind of creeped me out. I actually have this old friend named Katie. I haven't talked to her. I think she goes by Catherine now, but I haven't talked to her in a long time. But she told me, she goes, to her, the creepiest thing is when people just stand there staring at you. I was like, really? She goes, yeah, imagine you're late at night sitting at your house. You look out a window and someone's just staring at you from the field or your front yard or wherever you're at. And I go, yeah, that would be kind of creepy. And she's like, yeah, just the idea of them staring at me would be terrifying. And I said, yeah, and then they like run to your front door. She's like, no. If they do something, then it's not scary anymore to her. If they try to break into the house, then it all makes sense. Or if they run away, then it makes sense. But just them staring at her was the scary part. Once they did any other action, it didn't become scary. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. But it makes sense. That's where we're kind of segueing into this story. The story of the Dark Watchers. We're going to Santa Lucia Mountains, which sounds familiar to me, so I think we've been there before. But the Santa Lucia Mountains is in California. And to get there, we're simply going to hike. We're actually not going to use any vehicles this time. We're going to hike. Because that's how the people experience these things. But we do have our official Dead Rabbit walking sticks, so we're going to use those. They're in the shape of a normal stick. But they have the Dead Rabbit logo head is on the top. So it's a pretty dope looking Gandalf staff with a ceramic, that's probably not very safe, with a steel Dead Rabbit logo head on top, created by Ash Black. Now, it makes it really heavy, but we might need them for defensive tools. We're walking through a chasm, like a valley, through the Santa Lucia Mountains. So this is the way the story goes. If you walk through the area, the valley of the mountains, either at midnight or at dawn, and you look up at the mountains, you look up at the dark peaks of the range around you, you will see them. Descriptions vary. Sometimes they're 7 feet tall. Sometimes they're 15 feet tall. Damn, dude, that makes Bigfoot look like a normal person. Makes Bigfoot look like a chump. 15 feet tall. Sometimes just the shadow of a human. Sometimes they have the shadow, they're still completely engulfed in darkness, but they have a wide brim hat. Sometimes they wear long flowing cloaks. Now, shadow people have been described as wearing the hats and the cloaks before. None of them have gotten to the size of 15 feet. That's huge. That's like 2 Jasons standing on top of each other. No, that's like 2.5 Jasons standing on top of each other. It's quite the sight to see. And sometimes they have walking sticks. Some people have said that the natives in the area avoided the area, that they saw the Dark Watchers as well, but there's actually no proof that Native Americans in that area ever recorded any incidents with the Dark Watchers. Where we really start to see reports of them is when Westerners showed up. So when the Spaniards showed up, way back in time, they saw them. They called them, this is a pretty dope name, they called them Los Vigilantes Oscuro, which I think means Batman. But I'm not entirely for sure. But they called them Los Vigilantes Oscuro. And John Steinbeck wrote a collection of short stories, and in one of the short stories, he talks about one of the characters seeing a Dark Watcher. Steinbeck's son was obsessed with the Dark Watchers, and ended up writing a book just about the Dark Watchers. He said, I grew up around them. It's not like they were like rocking his crib or nothing like that, but he had seen them all of his childhood. He was really obsessed with what the phenomenon could be. And I remember reading about that a long time ago in the National Directory of Haunted Places. I was like, oh, that is creepy. Like the idea of looking up and something's just staring at you is very, very creepy. Now, sometimes people have reported that the creatures will do nothing, but like, so you're staring at the creature and you just see it staring off into nothingness. Staring off across the mountains, staring into the sky. Other people have seen him move. Other people have reported, this one guy was saying that he was smoking a cigarette, and when he took a puff, he saw the Dark Watcher do a similar motion. Other people have said they've taken their hats off, and they've seen the Dark Watcher also apparently remove something from their head. I think you can see where this is going at this point. So, phenomenon. And there is a similar phenomenon in Scotland. So there's this mountain in Scotland called Ben Macdui. Or does he? And this mountain it's very high, and a lot of people love climbing it. And every so often, this huge mist rolls in. And climbers who are up there have reported the Gray Man. What's the Gray Man? When you're hiking through the mist in the middle of nowhere, you start to hear footsteps behind you. I think that's enough. You get the point. And anyways, and these people have had an overwhelming sense of fear. Like, I've never been afraid of anything as much as I've been afraid of what was behind me. And they turn around, and behind them in the mist, they see a giant, again, like a 15-foot tall shadow of a person walking behind them. Now, sometimes they see it when they're going up the mountain. Sometimes there's reports of them seeing coming down the mountain. Usually it's coming down the mountain, or if it is, they're very shortly coming down the mountain because they flee the area. They just see this giant figure chasing them. The first reported case of that was in the late 1700s. But it wasn't until the early 1900s where a very famous mountain climber said he was at like this mountain climbing convention. And he goes, I gotta tell you guys something. One day I was up on Ben Macdui, and this happened. And people are like, well, that's kind of a weird story. And he's like, yeah, that's why I didn't tell you that. He was the one who's saying I was walking down the mountain, heard something behind me, turned around, saw this giant gray dude walking behind me, I took off down the mountain. But since then, other people have reported this phenomenon as well. Always comes with the mist. Always comes with the mist. So, I'm researching these stories, and I heard about the Dark Watchers back when I read the book, and then I recently discovered the Gray Man. I was like, oh, this is a great story for the podcast. But it's funny because let's go back to that story that happened in the late 1700s, the very first sighting of the Gray Man. There was a sheep herder who was herding a sheep, and the mist rolled in. And he's like, oh, this sucks. Like, herding sheep is already kind of hard, and now I can't see anything. There's all this mist everywhere. And he turns and he looks up the mountain, and he sees the Gray Man. First reported sighting of it. And he books it out of the mist. He leaves his sheep there. He runs back to his house. And he's like, oh my God, that was the scariest thing I've ever seen. Something was up there, I totally swear. But he's like, but I left all my sheep up there. He's not like a mountain climber where he can just run down the mountain and be like, I'll go climb another mountain. Like, that's his job. His sheep are up there. So the next day he's like, damn it, I have to go back up there. He goes back up there, the mist is rolling back in, and he sees the Gray Man now standing quite a distance away, but still in front of him. And he's looking at it, and he's like, why is it standing exactly like me? And he takes his hat off, and he sees the shadow take its hat off, and he's like, oh, it's just my reflection. Apparently, this is what these things are. And this was kind of a buzzkill. There's a thing called a Brocken specter. What happens if the sun hits it at the right angle, a shadow is projected onto a cloud. So, that's what it is. These people who are up, especially Ben Macdui, because it only happens when the mist rolls in. You're in the mist, and the sun, you're basically projecting your shadow onto a cloud. And you see a giant person who's you walking after you because you turn around and it's your shadow. You're basically being scared of your shadow. And they've said the thing with the sound like footsteps behind you, that can be explained a couple different ways. It's funny because I've always heard footsteps behind me all the time when I walk. When my feet are hitting gravel, it always sounds like there's someone 2-3 feet behind me, and there's nobody there. So it could be you're walking down a mountain, and every time you take a step, little rocks are coming down, so it's making it sound like there's other footprints. These guys are experienced mountain climbers, so they would figure that. There's also been things with the moisture in the mist is actually creating that sound as it's making rocks move around or something weird like that. So that's what most likely is the Gray Man of Ben Macdui. With the Dark Watchers, I think it's also probably the same thing. I think that they're actually, now, again, because it says that you can see it at twilight or dawn. I don't know how much sun is really flying around during twilight, because I know that's when the vampires are out, but I think that's the same thing, because again, basically, you look up, you're walking with a walking stick, and you look up on a mountain, and you see someone else with a walking stick. You're not going to think, oh, that must just be my shadow, because it's super far away. You don't think shadow works like that, but that's most likely what the Dark Watchers are as well, is the Brocken Spectre. And what's funny is I imagine the Native Americans back then would walk through that valley, they'd look up, they'd see a dude up there, and they'd be like, it's just my shadow, and kept on walking. And it wasn't until super superstitious people came to America and started walking through that valley, and they looked up and they're like, oh, a ghost! Like, I think the natives were like, yeah, it's probably just my shadow. It's weird, it's kind of... Actually, wait a second. Maybe that doesn't explain the Dark Watchers, because at least the Gray Man walks with you and makes it look like it's chasing you, but the Dark Watchers just stand there. And they don't walk with you. Maybe the Dark Watchers are real. Just thought of that. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on to the... I didn't plan on that little nugget. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic here. After I blew my own mind with the Dark Watchers. It's funny, it's people complain about the show every once in a while. It mostly gets a lot of praise, which I appreciate. But one guy's like, how come you always act like you're shocked about this stuff? You've done research on it. I was thinking, well, yeah, if you listen to the show, I think you're aware of how much research I do on stuff. And two, you'd be surprised how often when you're looking at your own notes, I've done that quite a few times on this show. I'm going through my notes. The Ariana Grande episode's the best example of that. Where I had my notes and I had an angle that I was going for with the story, and as I started reporting it, I was like, I'm way off on this. I think there's something more to it. So, that was that. I was like, oh, the Dark Watchers are totally just an optical illusion. It's nothing scary. But yeah, they don't... I don't think they might actually be something interesting. I always like surprising myself. But, I'm done surprising myself for now. But, that all being said, we are done walking. Our legs are sore. Oh, my calf muscles. I need some bananas. Let's eat some bananas. Let's go get some potassium. Then let's hop in the Carpenter Copter, baby. It's the only way to fly. We are going to Haizu Valley. That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.